So then another sort of question which comes to mind, how does it work in droughts, and what are the ways that you can manage reserves for drought, and how do you get it working in terms of getting those perennials and that diversity going in drier landscapes? Will it work, and how does that work?
Yeah, again, really interesting. I was talking just a couple of weeks ago. We were in California, very Mediterranean, very dry environment, and people there were really struggling to get perennials, but some of them were starting to make that happen. And again, just trying to say to them, maybe a little bit more patience, and hey, you're using a tool. Can we use the tool differently? More density or longer recovery periods? Let's give it a trial. And I think fellow educator Graham Hand came up with some really great ideas, and he calls them safe to fail trials, where literally jam animals in a tiny area for a couple of hours while you're going to have a breakfast or something, and then just leave that as a trial area. In terms of your productivity of your land, it's not going to make a huge difference. It's certainly not going to put the animals back. I mean, we put them in the yards for 2 days, just an hour or two inside the paddock or overnight inside this little temporary area, and then lock it up and just see what happens. And again, it's a really powerful way for you to see what's happening on your land. I think farmers have virtually given away the right to trial stuff on their places. We've given away to governments, we've given away to companies, corporations, and every farm's different. Every paddock's different, everybody's herd's different, and so being able to trial things and see them whether they work on your place or not is really, really important. But we need to be able to do it in a way that's not going to cost an arm and a leg. So fencing off these little areas, jamming the animals in there for an hour or two or overnight, and Graham Hand calls them safe to fail trials. They're just a fantastic way of you, the landholder, the decision maker, running a small trial on your place to see what is possible. And so I find those to be really valuable for getting change to happen. Managing drought, again, part of the planning process is really focused on drought. And living in Australia, but Africa was the same. I mean, we have to plan for drought because literally every second year is going to be a drought. And often what we find is people tend to lock up country as a drought reserve, and often what happens there is the plants, the nests, they start becoming grey, oxidized, and they lose value, and again they lose carbon, because that as soon as the plant turns grey, we know it's pushing carbon up into the atmosphere. So the process of planning for drought in holistic planned grazing is, we rather than lock up an area of land which then may start becoming grey and oxidized, we reserve time in all paddocks, and that has many benefits. The first one obviously is we're not resting land to the point where it becomes oxidized. The second is if the rains come when you expect them, which might happen 50% of the time, often all that feed in that paddock that you've locked up goes to waste, because if you've got a green pick and now that's last year's feed that has had rain on it, your animals generally won't even look at it. They'll be busting through your fences to get the green pick. If you've just left time in all paddocks, generally what you're leaving behind is your worst quality feed. And say if the rains come when you expect them, you're not paying that high price by wasting a lot of good quality feed. When you lock up a paddock, you're reducing the number of paddocks available for management. And it's, the more paddocks you have, anybody who's increased their paddock numbers, suddenly you've got more opportunity to manage all that complexity of planting trees, fixing fences, putting in new troughs. Where do you want your animals to be when you go on holiday? In a paddock that's got plenty of food, plenty of water, good fencing. So the more paddocks you have, the easier it is to factor in all those management ideas. And if we're locking paddocks up for a drought that may occur 50% of the time, again, it limits your capacity to be flexible. So the idea behind managing drought in holistic planned grazing is, rather than lock up a paddock or an area, or another option we'll always put hay bales away, is to reserve time in all paddocks. So you'll just leave a bit of feed in every single paddock. And if the rains don't come when you expect them, then you go back through all the paddocks again and just pick up that feed. And often it's your worst quality feed, but hey, we're going to drought. And so, hopefully through your management, that feed starts getting better and better as we go, but it will be your poorer quality feed, but it's a drought reserve.